The air over Maple Grove Circle shimmered with summer heat and the scent of freshly cut grass, until a sharp, unmistakable crack split the stillness. It was the sound of skin striking skin, loud enough to silence the entire cul-de-sac. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Sprinklers sputtered into quiet. Even the ever-present hum of lawnmowers seemed to fade. All eyes turned toward the source, Karen Williamson, the self-appointed queen of our suburban kingdom, reeling backward from her husband's open-handed slap. Her clipboard, her ever-present symbol of control, was still clutched in one trembling hand, like a judge refusing to surrender the gavel. Her perfectly styled blonde hair, normally so polished it could have graced a magazine cover, now hung wild around her flushed cheek. And for the first time in the 3 years I'd lived under her reign of homeowner tyranny, through HOA meetings, violation notices, and passive-aggressive friendly reminders, Karen Williamson was utterly, completely speechless. 30 feet away, a fire truck idled like a hulking red beast, lights flashing in sharp pulses of crimson and white that reflected off the rows of identical beige houses. It was parked just slightly askew, its front bumper extending maybe a foot into the guest parking space outside the Petersons' house. A trivial offense in any sane neighborhood, but reason had no place in Maple Grove Circle anymore. Not since Karen decided that order was worth more than compassion. The firefighters, moments ago busy ventilating Mrs. Peterson's smoke-filled kitchen, now stood frozen in disbelief. The scene before them was almost poetic, karma delivered by the very man who'd stood beside Karen at every HOA meeting, nodding along to her lectures. A few of the neighbors exchanged silent glances that said what we were all thinking. Justice, at last. But moments like this don't appear out of nowhere. They're built slowly, layer by layer, over years of control, resentment, and unchecked power. To understand what brought us here, to this hot summer afternoon where the HOA president herself was struck, speechless, you'd have to go back to how the day began. It started like any other. Tuesday in our little pocket of suburban perfection. Every mailbox is exactly 4 feet high. Every lawn is trimmed to an HOA-approved 2 inches. Every house I painted in one of the 4 authorized shades of beige. Maple Grove Circle wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a shrine to uniformity. And presiding over it all was Karen Williamson, HOA president for the past 4 years, and self-proclaimed guardian of community standards. Her rule book, 47 pages long and counting, dictated everything from which wreaths were allowed on doors, to how early holiday lights could be displayed. Even the placement of trash cans on collection day had its own subsection. And heaven help the poor soul who dared plant flowers in a color not sanctioned in Appendix B. That afternoon, I was out front washing my car when the peace was shattered with the first wail of a siren. The sound cut through the neighborhood like a knife, unnatural, urgent. Seconds later, a massive red fire truck swung around the corner and skidded to a stop in front of the Petersons' house. Mrs. Peterson, our sweet but scatterbrained widow, had apparently left a burner on again. The resulting smoke had triggered a neighbor's alarm, and within minutes, the Maple County Fire Department had arrived. Hoses uncoiled, helmets gleamed, and boots stomped across asphalt as firefighters moved with calm precision. From my driveway, I could see them working inside through the haze, professional, efficient, reassuring, and then, like a storm breaking over calm waters, Karen made her entrance. The front door of her house slammed open with the force of a woman who had been waiting for a reason to assert authority. Out she marched, pastel slacks pressed sharp as knives, a matching sweater set draped over her shoulders, a clipboard in one hand, and a yellow measuring tape in the other. Her eyes locked onto the fire truck with predatory focus. To anyone else, the truck's parking job was entirely reasonable. It was an emergency. Lives could have been at risk. But Karen didn't deal in reason, she dealt in regulation. And this, to her, was a clear violation. She stalked around the vehicle, muttering to herself and snapping out measurements like she was collecting evidence for a trial. Her pen scratched furiously against her clipboard as she whispered words like unauthorized and non-compliance. The firefighters paid her no mind at first. still focused on venting the smoke from Mrs. Peterson's kitchen. That was her first mistake. Karen wasn't accustomed to being ignored. To her, being dismissed wasn't just rude, it was insubordination. She zeroed in on Captain Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran of the department. His face was streaked with soot, his jaw set with the weary patience of a man who'd seen it all. He stepped out from the Petersons' front door, helmet tucked under one arm, and before he could so much as greet her, Karen pounced. Her voice sliced through the air, high, shrill, commanding, as she informed him that his fire truck violated Section 12.4.4 of the Maple Grove Circle HOA guidelines, specifically regarding unauthorized parking in guest-designated zones. Rodriguez just stared at her for a beat, expression unreadable, though his eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of disbelief. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and measured, the tone of a man who's learned to handle chaos with grace. He explained that they were responding to a fire, that the placement of the truck was temporary, and that they'd be gone as soon as the situation was secure. He even apologized for the inconvenience, far more courtesy than she deserved. But Karen wasn't looking for an apology. She wanted obedience, and the captain's calm professionalism only fueled her indignation. Her voice rose another octave as she began to lecture him about community standards, legal liability, and the slippery slope of letting public servants disregard HOA rules. And that, though none of us knew it then, was the beginning of the end of Karen Williamson's rule over Maple Grove Circle. She swung her clipboard like a weapon, her voice slicing through the humid afternoon air as she rattled off subsections and amendments with the ferocity of a courtroom prosecutor. Her words had that familiar edge, sharp, self-righteous, unstoppable. Within minutes, the neighborhood had gathered like moths to a flame. The Johnsons leaned over their porch railing, whispering behind their hands. The young couple with twin toddlers halted mid-stroll, eyes wide. Even old Mr. Hendris, who rarely appeared outside his living room, peeked from behind his curtains. Everyone knew Karen's outbursts were legendary, and none of us were about to miss this live performance. Captain Rodriguez's patience was visibly thinning. He dealt with car crashes, electrical fires, and panicked homeowners, but never an HOA president wielding a clipboard like a badge. Keeping his tone calm, he reminded Karen that his crew was handling a safety hazard and would move the truck when it was safe to do so. He even suggested, with a note of weary diplomacy, that maybe she should check on Mrs. Peterson instead. That single comment hit her like an insult. Karen's back stiffened, her eyes narrowing to slits. The suggestion that she redirect her attention, away from the rules, was intolerable. Her voice rose, trembling with fury as she launched into another tirade about the importance of order. Then, in a move that left us all stunned, she whipped out her phone and announced to everyone, within earshot, that she was calling Riverside, towing to have the fire truck removed if it wasn't gone within 10 minutes. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even for Karen, this was uncharted territory. Petty, sure, controlling, always. But calling a tow truck on emergency responders in the middle of an active situation? That was madness. Rodriguez took a single step closer, his tone no longer patient, but clipped and controlled. He warned her, clearly and firmly, that interfering with emergency services was a criminal offense. His crew paused their cleanup, watching the confrontation unfold, the sound of dripping hoses the only thing breaking the silence. But Karen wasn't backing down. With the confidence of someone who'd never once faced consequences, she turned her back on the captain, pressed the phone to her ear, and called 911. Her voice rang out across the cul-de-sac, steady and defiant, as she informed the dispatcher that she needed police assistance because the firefighters were in violation of HOA regulations. That's when David Williamson's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. It was almost poetic, the same car Karen had once reported to the HOA board for having a parking sticker 2 millimeters out of alignment. The engine cut off and out stepped David, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the picture of suburban exhaustion. He looked like a man who'd fought too many quiet battles and lost most of them. But today, something in him was different. He saw it all in an instant. The flashing lights, The weary firefighters, the frail Mrs. Peterson wrapped in a blanket on her porch, and his wife standing at the center of it all, barking orders like a general on a power trip. David approached slowly, placing a hand on Karen's arm. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Karen," he murmured, "maybe we should talk about this inside." She shrugged him off without so much as a glance, still barking HOA codes into the phone. He tried again, leaning close, voice low but urgent. Whatever he said, it wasn't enough. Karen's head snapped toward him, eyes blazing, and then she exploded. Her words came sharp and venomous, accusing him of betrayal, of humiliating her in front of her community. She shouted that he never respected her authority, never supported her leadership. Her voice climbed higher and higher until she declared, for all of us to hear, that the fire truck had exactly 5 minutes to vacate the street, or she would take the matter to City Hall. The mayor would hear about this, she swore. The fire chief. Anyone who would listen. That was the breaking point. Captain Rodriguez's jaw tightened. His patience had burned away entirely. He stepped forward and told Karen in no uncertain terms that she was interfering with an active emergency scene, and that if she didn't stand down, legal action could follow. But before anyone could react further, David did something none of us saw coming. Years of quiet tolerance. Bottled frustration and public embarrassment boiled over in a single instant. His hand came up faster than thought. Just one motion, and the crack of it echoed through Maple Grove Circle. Karen's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the asphalt. She stumbled backward, clutching her reddening cheek, her clipboard, the ultimate symbol of her authority, slipping from her grasp. Papers scattered in the hot wind, fluttering across the pavement like the ashes of her control. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rhythmic flash of the fire truck's lights seemed to pause in disbelief. David stood still for a long moment, then turned to face the firefighters. His voice was calm, steady, but filled with regret. "I'm so sorry," he said. "She's been under a lot of stress lately, but that doesn't excuse this." It was like a spell had been broken. Neighbors began to move. Mrs. Johnson appeared with bottles of cold water for the crew. The young couple helped collect Karen's scattered papers. Even hair-clusive Mr. Hendris came out from behind his curtains and shook Captain Rodriguez's hand. Karen stood alone in the middle of the street, pale and hollow-eyed, the defiance gone from her face. Without a word, she turned and walked back toward her house, leaving the mess and her clipboard behind. David stayed, helping the firefighters finish their cleanup. When the truck finally pulled away, Rodriguez made sure to note the entire incident in his official report. The fallout came fast. Within days, Karen stopped attending HOA meetings altogether. Whispers spread that she and David were separating. She moved in with her sister across town. He stayed behind, quieter, calmer, even friendly. The city attorney's office opened an inquiry into her interference with emergency services. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove her from the presidency and barred her from ever holding another position. Certified letter arrived soon after, an official $5,000. Fine for obstructing emergency operations. When the delivery truck pulled away, a cheer went up from a few porches. For the first time in years, Maple Grove Circle felt lighter, freer, like the air itself had loosened its grip. And if you enjoyed this satisfying slice of suburban justice, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more people find these wild neighborhood tales. And subscribe for more stories of everyday drama, poetic payback, and the occasional Karen finally getting what she deserves. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.